Okay, so we hinted at this before, but this is real when we talk about caregiving relationships, and that is the idea of sometimes care trespasses. Let's modify that. Almost always care trespasses on pre-existing relationship boundaries that we didn't even know we had until they are trespassed. Sometimes caregiving does ask us or require us to violate those relationship values and ways of acting that we once thought were sacred or unique or so meaningful about our relationships. So maybe you can think about what that might be. And we use this example, Donna, of bathing a spouse. So many spousal caregivers talk about this idea that for some, the trespassive nature of bathing their loved one, for their spouse, violates how it takes function into a kind of physical intimacy that they used to value so much in their relationship. And so some have the privilege to be able to think about working around that, but at the very least, identifying that trespassive nature. What is transgressive? Because when we all have our relationship identities, that which we hold sacred about what it makes us an us. So think about that. If you're a child caring for a parent caring for a child, if you're caring for a spouse, what is that in which you feel like you're violating a script?
Right. Yeah. And you know it when it happens and you think, no, this is not right.
And yet you feel trapped in the sense that there is, first off, very few people that you can talk to about it. And oftentimes you can't talk to the person that you're caring for because that may make them feel more guilty if they are capable even of conceiving of that. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes it's helpful to think about what boundaries that are threatening to your relationship. I mean, we don't oftentimes think about our boundaries, Donna, as you said, until we cross them. So one challenge we have for our participants today is to think about, what are the relationship boundaries? You may not be able to do anything about them, but I think knowing where they are gives a kind of three-dimensional landscape to what you're living in and responding to, given the givens. And it might help you understand how you're feeling. Because sometimes it's hard to distinguish between what we're feeling about a person versus what we're feeling about what's happening to our relationship.
Yes. And these crossed boundaries are often very, very helpful, just really from a practical point of view too, in helping you decide, okay, if I do get outside help, what do I want that person to do? I mean, what are the things that I will never give up in my caregiving? Because in caring for people, some of those care activities become sacred. They become sacred rituals of intimacy, and they can be very beautiful. You're not giving that away to somebody that you're going to pay, but where you are more aware of what are the boundaries that cross that you could give to someone else so that you wouldn't have to cross those boundaries every day, if that's a possibility for you. Because an awful lot of people that I know in caring, and myself included, I remember when somebody came in my house, some social worker or other, and said, "What do you need?" And I looked at them like they were from outer space. I was falling apart, but I said, everything. And I couldn't at that point perform some kind of what we call personal science to understand what is actually going on in my day. Let's look at all the things I'm actually doing. Which ones are crossing boundaries and making me feel uncomfortable and driving me crazy with grief or just this intense sensation that this shouldn't be happening. It's inappropriate for me to bathe my father, who was maybe an army general or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a boundary. I just don't want to go there. We're going to need somebody else to do that. But being able to curate your life and understand those boundaries will help you determine what kind of help you need and when to get it and what that person needs to be able to do for you.
That's such an important point that I know you're going to enunciate on next week. It's identifying both the kinds of tasks related experiences, part of the caregiver relationship, as well as the relational sacred components. Most people's vocabulary is one noted. So outsiders might say help is simply kind of task oriented, and tasks are an instrumental part of what we do as caregivers. But there is knowing what it is you need in order to maintain that sense of value in your relationship can be as sustaining as anything else. As such an important point.
Yes.
Okay, so another factor that shapes our relationships with our loved ones is what we also talked about a few minutes ago, and this is confusing because I'm purposefully using the word nostalgia, but I'm using it different than we mostly think about it because, Donna, caregivers have multiple meanings for things, and other people's nostalgia is a little bit different than ours. Caregivers, like most other people, have memories and nostalgia of the way things used to be, of our pre-existing caregiving relationship, right? Just like everyone has nostalgia of what their childhood may have been like, or, some time past pre-pandemic. Perhaps we have nostalgia for sitting around with coffee with our friends. But what we have as caregivers is so three-dimensional here. We have memories of what was expected to happen in the future, but can't now with the person that we love and care for. Meaning that our scripts about our future, what we anticipated, what we thought was going to happen, is as real as any past experience. Because that's the power of scripts. They don't only shape what we remember about the past, but they tell us what's going to happen in the future. So when we use this term nostalgia, we're talking about what you remember and also what you projected. Yeah. And it becomes really complicated, right, Donna?
Oh, yeah. And, I think when I'm thinking of other presentations you and I have given together, Zachary, and some of the images that we use in sometimes in our PowerPoints, when you talk about how the past disappears and the future disappears. And we are hyper-vigilant in the now. But we dream of the past and the future, which no longer exists really for us. And I think one of the images that we had for that was, it's a painting of a girl digging in a field, and she's actually burying another version of herself under the ground, but she's watering a plant that's growing from the earth too. So, yeah, I mean, this is all complicated, and I think what we're talking about here is the fact that yes, the past that you had is certainly never going to magically come back, and the future that you had dreamt of isn't going to magically appear. But what we talk about throughout the book is seeking possibility in the now. How do we nurture possibility? What is possible?
And what shapes what may be possible and what we pay attention to is partly bound up in those scripts that we don't even know exist. So if participants want to kind of privately write down or share this in the chat box, this is about the past, this first question. We're kind of reconsidering those scripts that we didn't even know existed in our head. I had always counted on the fact that think about your relationship with your loved one, would always be able to blank, but I can't see that happening now. So what was it that you in your relationship with your loved one, perhaps prior to caregiving, always just counted on? And we all have this. We all project. That's what a relationship is. It's a we that is not bound by time and space. And that's what connects us and makes us feel close. So fill in the blank there if you can about the past, right? That's the nostalgia about what was, okay? And then this is the nostalgia about what we had anticipated. We had dreamed of enjoying blank together, but now that's not a possibility. So you have what you always counted on and what you dreamed of enjoying. So kind of a nostalgia of the past and the present, of the past and the future. That's how this becomes kind of wound up. And the question we have for you when you map out those two past future scripts is, how were these expectations about what was going to happen? How does it make it more challenging to notice what is available now in your relationship? We come back to that theme. Sometimes we have to rewrite what we anticipated happening, Donna, even though it didn't happen or it's not happening. Sometimes our expectations of the future can impact the present. And it's very subtle, but it's so influential because we oftentimes don't revisit our expectations that become frozen in a nostalgia of desire as much as anything else.
Yeah. Lots of people listening will be familiar with Welcome to Holland, Emily Pearl Kingsley's piece about having a child with a disability is like preparing for a trip to Rome and learning Italian and getting all the travel books and booking flights and suddenly, day has come and here you are sitting on a plane and the pilot says, "I'm sorry, you're being rerouted to Holland." And you don't speak the language, you don't know anything about the country, you have no idea. All you think about is, but I booked Rome. And I think a lot of this is similar to this metaphor of, this is the challenge to say, what of those pre-existing beliefs make it hard for you to say, okay, I'm in Holland. What's in Holland? Let me look around. Let me discover what this is exactly and focus on it with full commitment so that I don't constantly keep thinking of Rome.
That is it. And it's not, and that loss doesn't mean that you don't ever stop thinking of Rome, but you constantly have to check yourself or at least attempt to do that, at least identify those. And, just to reiterate, we're not saying that you give up on what you anticipated or simply can't mourn what will no longer be, because that's so powerful and part of the experience.
Yes, of course.
But it might interrupt the stream of awareness of what is going on with and around your loved one. It might. And so these are challenging things, but we're really going through a lot of these rewriting exercises simply in an attempt to raise our awareness, perhaps, of that which may have remained implicit prior to our discussion today.